usher. Anybody else got Sunday school money? The usher wants to know. After this many years in ministry, I finally gave in to a woman having a position. All right. We're going to take lesson number 8 today. And probably this will be the last lesson, though there's more characters in Proverbs. You're getting wore out, so. All right. Brother Dan, open us in a word of prayer.
Father, we thank you again for this day. God, we thank you that we have a place to meet still. The Word of God can create liberty. I pray that you help preach this lesson today and help our hearts be open to it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right. Chapter 14. And kind of dealing with persons in this last lesson here. Verse 5 in chapter 14 says, a faithful witness will not lie, but a false witness will utter lies. So we aimed at the faithful witness, but the false witness has an equal amount of time, space in the verse. So tell me what you discovered about the faithful witness. I think a faithful witness to me doesn't mean that every time somebody steps around the corner you've got to throw something in their face, but you be faithful when the Lord opens the door for you to do something. All of us have probably had that moment like, I should have gave that guy a track, or I should have said something.
The definition of faithful
Okay.
is remaining loyal and steadfast, conscientious, loyal. So that would apply, and it will be, you're not going to be prone to gossip, because if you're a faithful witness and you're not going to lie, then you're going to be loyal and steadfast to whomever, whether it be the Lord or your friend.
And you possibly can't be a politician if you're going to be.
And Psalm 89:37, the moon is a faithful witness in heaven, and it refers back to God's promise to David for his covenant being established forever.
Revelation 1:5, Jesus is called the faithful witness.
Yes.
And he was that.
And in Jeremiah 42, the Lord be a true and faithful witness.
There'll be a lot of people someday stand before God and find out he was telling the truth about whatever it was that they.
Revelation 3:14 says, and unto the angel of the church of the Laodiceans write, these things saith the Amen, the faithful and the true witness, the beginning of the creation.
Faithful witness is going to tell the truth. He's not going to hold back. He might not be appreciated for it, but he's going to do it. I seriously doubt that any of us have ever had anybody say this. I'm sure glad you told me that.
I think it's interesting, he's called the faithful witness. John 14, he says that he's truth,
Yeah.
So everything that he witnesses will be absolute truth. So when they stand at the white throne of judgment, they have no excuse because he has all the truth.
It's going to be a tough day on the range.
I'll look up the reference, but Proverbs 20:26 has the faithful man who can find.
Proverbs 26.
20 verse 6.
Hmm.
There's a virtuous woman who could find, but there's also the faithful
That's the interesting statement, what we want to be. The Lord says it's hard to be found. Didn't it say one place that he was looking for a man to stand in the gap and he found none?
Reading the whole verse, it says, most men will proclaim everyone his own goodness, but a faithful man who can find?
In other words, careful you're not lying about yourself.
There's another one about a faithful messenger. I had to look at that reference too. It's contrasted with the sluggard, or the
Sluggard.
vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes. So is a sluggard to them that send him. But Proverbs 25:13 gives a contrast of as cold of snow in the time of harvest, so is a faithful messenger to them that send him. But he refresheth the soul of his masters.
You have lots of opportunities as a Christian to be faithful.
Psalm 12:1 says, for the faithful fail from among the children.
Children of men. And they do. We've all failed somebody or had somebody fail us one way or another. Failure is going to happen. We're in Proverbs 14:5, ma'am. Okay. Just wanted to be sure. All right, let's take the next one there, then the faithful friend. Well, a friend, we'll put it that way. I think what I saw was that if thou be a surety for thy friend, and being a surety means you'll back up whatever he can't take care of. And yet it says this much, if thou art stricken thy hands with a stranger, if thou hast stricken a hand with a stranger, thou art snared with the words of thy mouth. So I'm going to be careful when you strike hands with a person you don't really know. And you want to be careful. He says, my son, if thou be surety for thy friend. There's a chance that you can mess up by.
Verse 3 says, make sure they're friends, so you want to be sure that he's really your friend.
Yeah. Have you ever thought somebody was your friend and found out?
I have a friend is a person whom one knows, likes, and trusts. An acquaintance, one whom is allied in a struggle or cause, a comrade, or one who supports, or a member of a society of friends, a Quaker.
Yeah. Guilty. I like this kind of study, and I'll tell you why I like it. It broadens your understanding of things. We read a verse, and that's it. And there's probably 10 verses that go with it somewhere. Sometimes just looking up the definition of a word is helpful.
Along that same line of being surety, Proverbs 17:18 says that a man that's void of understanding striketh hands and becometh surety in the presence of his friends.
Void of understanding.
Void of understanding, yes.
Have you ever said, I didn't know what I was getting into? I always tell people, they flash that thing across the screen, and then below that is 7 million words so small that you can't read them if you could try. I said, always read the fine print. That's where they'll get you. Get you in the fine print.
Proverbs 14:20 says the poor is hated even of his own neighbor, but the rich hath many friends. But I wonder how really friends they are, or if they're just there for the goods.
There's another verse, and I didn't write down the reference, it said, wealth or riches makes friends. Maketh a friend.
What's that?
That's why I ain't got none.
You ain't got none. He ain't got any.
He ain't got no.
Yeah.
He has more than he knows. Job said, he's talking to his friends, quote,
Yeah,
quote.
quote,
He
yeah.
says, lay down, put me in surety with thee. Who is he that will strike hands with me?
Yeah, nobody's going to strike hands with Job in the condition he's in. Why? They don't want to get what he's got.
They didn't want to be surety with him.
That's right. That's right.
And he was poor.
At that point in time, he was poor.
Abraham was called a friend of God.
I think, is there only 2 in the Bible or twice that he's called that? There's only 2 in the Bible. That's an interesting thing, being a friend of God. They sing that song, and I don't know what the title of it is, but it goes like this. I'm going to shake hands with the Master by and by. I thought, that's almost yucky. You're going to get to heaven. Hi, Jesus, thanks for dying for me. See you later. I mean, I know what they mean when they're singing the song, but it just sounds cheap.
Yep.
Like if the Lord were to come in, some of us would shake hands with him and the rest of us would ignore him.
Jesus called Judas a friend,
Yeah, I always thought that was interesting.
as well as that man who came into the wedding, the guest who came into the wedding without a
And he called him friend.
wedding
Yeah.
garment.
There's some things in the Bible once in a while that seem to contradict what you think about something. And that, to me, just proves as much. God doesn't think like we think. People say, well, if I was God, I'd do it. No, if you was God, you'd do exactly what God's doing.
I look at the reference, but Proverbs 18:24 says a friend, there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother.
If you don't know that friend, you need to know him. You've probably said something like this to someone or in the area where somebody else is. I thought that was my friend. Sometimes you find out that the person you thought was your friend isn't really your friend in the definition and term of friend. Can't,
Jesus said, my own familiar friend hath forsaken me.
yeah. Psalm 22, is that? That Psalm 22, brother?
I don't,
Oh,
I didn't look that one up.
okay.
You might be right.
Well, if it is, it's the first time. My wife told me the other day I was right. I went, it's still on the wall, Don. I can go to it once, look at it and go, one time I was right. Yeah. I don't know if we want to deal with the next one or not. 23, 21. A glutton. The Lord is not for overeating, just the thought, though, that your way.
Well, verse 2 is pretty clear about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Verse 21, we'll look at that also. For the drunkard and the glutton shall come to poverty, and drowsiness shall clothe a man with, shall a man, good night, shall clothe a man with rags. Did anybody look up the word glutton? Not gluten.
I looked it up, but nobody's gonna wanna hear it.
Nope.
Give us what we don't want to hear.
An excessively greedy eater, another term for Wolverine, especially
That's low.
No, it's what it says. I didn't make this up. That's what you always say. I didn't make it up. I was just saying what it says.
Well, I'm sorry. The Hebrew says,
Tell me what the Hebrew says. I wanna know.
I wish I could. When you're a Hebrew does not give you command of the language.
In Webster, it says, one eager of anything to excess.
Of anything, so we can be a glutton in anything.
Be a glutton for punishment, that's the term.
Yeah.
A glutton for punishment, oh. And just like Brother Dan said, verse 2 is pretty clear. Put a knife to thy throat.
So there's two
I tried that, but I couldn't go through it.
there's two synonyms in the Bible. One is surfeiting.
Surfeiting? Really?
Surfeiting and drunkenness used together. Surfeiting is a little bit more excessive than gluttony. And then rioting, and righteous rioting. Spend his days with how's it say it? Righteous living or riotous living? And that's also connected with,
Gluttony.
you know,
Whenever I
that's
think,
past research I've done.
I don't know about you, whenever I think of gluttony, I think of those guys on the TV and they're eating a chicken leg. That's what I always think of.
Deuteronomy 21:20 says, "And they shall say unto the elders of his city, This our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard." So the stubbornness and the rebellion also goes
Go with
along
gluttony.
with the gluttony and the drunkenness.
And you know what they did with that boy?
And then he got stoned.
Yeah, they stoned him.
They sent him for help and rehab.
Yeah. Went to rehab.
Yep.
When you do this kind of study and you get these definitions and you look stuff up, you find yourself wondering how in the world America made it as far as we made it.
Yeah.
I think our days are narrowing down. I hope not, but I can't see much in the future that. Anybody else on gluttony?
As you said, lack of self-control, focus on earthly pleasure rather than on spiritual well-being.
So you could be a glutton for worldly pleasures. And would you say America is a gluttony when it comes to pleasures? I always thought it was interesting. Invite people out to church. Well, what time's church? Well, it's 10 o'clock for Sunday school, 11 o'clock morning service. Well, I don't know. I got to get my sleep. But on the holiday weekend, when they want to go snowmobiling, they can be up at 8 o'clock. Or earlier. I've seen them go when it was so cold you couldn't hardly stand it, and I'd say, you've got to be a glutton for punishment. I even hated to go outside and get the mail, much less.
Get up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, yeah. Well, years ago, and it's not that way anymore, and I think with all the hunting seasons and stuff anymore, but this road out here on the opening day of deer season, going north would be full. And then lately, in the last few years, there's hardly even a car going up the road. And I remember as a boy getting up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, getting ready to go up the road, go hunting. So when people tell me that's too early, I go, psh, depends on what you want to do, how early it is. Anybody else? If not, let's go to chapter 11. Since nobody here is of this character, chapter 11, verse 9 says, "As the hypocrite with his friends destroyeth the neighbor, but through knowledge shall the just be delivered." So the person who's telling on the neighbor to make the neighbor look bad is actually worse than the neighbor.
Yeah.
Huh? The Lord called the Pharisees hypocrites. Called them a bunch of snakes. Said you're a bunch of
Webster
snakes.
says one who feigns to be what he is not, and one who has the form of godliness without the power, or who assumes an appearance of piety and virtue when he is destitute of true religion.
So would you say John Wayne was a hypocrite?
Hollywood actors.
Every actor in Hollywood, outside of Hollywood, is a hypocrite. They're pretending to be something they're not. You say, well, they're just acting. You ever look up the word actor? You can't get away from the fact that what they're doing is against God's word.
And you get up on a stage outside of acting and claim that there's some sort of weighted authority on an issue.
Yeah.
His second definition is a dissembler, one who assumes a false appearance. Joel Osteen.
So that's somebody who dresses up to be something they're not.
Job 27:8 says, "For what is the hope of the hypocrite, though he hath gained when God taketh away his soul?
Read that again.
For what is the hope of the hypocrite, though he hath gained when God hath taken away his soul?"
Wow. He thinks he's got gain. Lord says, no, you don't.
Then Job 34:30 says that the hypocrite reign not, lest the people be ensnared. Oh dear.
Somehow I smell election in that, but
Getting political, huh?
yeah. Huh. Anybody else with a thought on the hypocrite?
Matthew 23 nails it down pretty good. For the Pharisees, Sadducees.
What's that again, brother?
Matthew 23, I'm sorry. Matthew 23 nails it down pretty good with the Pharisees and Sadducees. Compass land and earth to make one disciple, to make him twofold more the child of hell than they are.
Well, that goes on a lot.
Whited sepulchres.
And if you've never been to the Orient, when we were in Okinawa, all of the tombs were formed in the shape of a womb. Because they believe when you were born, it's where you're born, when you die, you go back into the womb. And they're white. And they're full of dead men's bones. And once a year, the season called Oban, O-B-O-N, Oban. It's held in August at the full moon. They put food out for them to come and eat. And then a certain day, and I don't know which day it is during the feast, a 12 or 13-year-old girl is sent in to wash the bones of her deceased uncle, dad. They say a lot of those girls lose it. I said, well, I don't want to go in no tomb, and I ain't no girl. I don't want to go in there and wash the bones of some dead man. I think he died with dirty bones, let him stay dirty. And that's quite a deal. My wife and I, because we lived in a heavily Okinawan area, and they have those parades, you know, and they got the dragon face, all that kind of stuff, and it goes on till ungodly hours, and it's a drunken feast, is what it is. It's nothing more than that. They get drunk on sake. Anybody else on the hypocrite, or are you afraid?
not as the hypocrites, Jesus specifically said. Fasting with a long face and publicly putting on a show, be ye not as the hypocrites.
Yeah, don't make a show of things. When you do a study like this, you soon learn that no matter how spiritual you think you are, you're not. And that's probably a good thing. It keeps you from being prideful, boastful. Anybody else? There is a lot on the hypocrite in the book of Proverbs, but we won't go through all of that. Let's look at the next one, chapter 3, verse 29. And there's a number of ways to go with this particular verse. It says, verse 29, devise not evil against thy neighbor, seeing he dwelleth surely by thee. What are the thoughts on that? And we learned from Luke 10, right? I think it was. What a neighbor is. Doesn't have to be somebody who lives next door to you.
In the law around, I don't remember, Exodus 22 or so, it's talking about if you have a neighbor that you hate, but his ox is in your yard or in a pit, so you're not to ignore it. You need to help out your neighbor. Take care of him.
If you stop to think about that application, where were you when he found you? You were an ox in the ditch.
Romans 15:2 says, let every one of us please his neighbor for his good to edification.
Can I tell you that sometimes it's hard to please a neighbor?
Yeah.
Sometimes you try your best and you can't please a neighbor no matter what you do. Because he is not living down south, but he is a good old boy.
I just did that passage in Luke, and I noticed that, because it wasn't a specific, person in relationship to like where we live, our neighbor, but what Jesus said when he asked the young man who was the neighbor, his reply was, he that showed mercy on him. So it stood out to me that we need to be merciful. Remember to show mercy, regardless.
And that's easy to do if somebody agrees with you.
Yeah.
Proverbs 16:29 says, a violent man enticeth his neighbor and leadeth him into the way that is not good.
Oh, there's a thought.
Yes, because he leadeth him into the way that is not good. It isn't necessarily that the man wanted to go that way. He got led that way.
That's why you see some children, they're a leader and some children are a follower.
Mm-hmm.
They get into trouble because they can't say, no, I don't do that.
The verse we just read, the hypocrite, Proverbs 11:9 said, a hypocrite with his mouth destroyeth his neighbor. So you have a responsibility even with your neighbors to
Yeah.
talkative, right?
Exodus told us that we're not to bear false witness against our neighbor.
Now you're getting personal, Dan.
Well, he says it again in 17, not to, well, he talks about not coveting your neighbor's house, your neighbor's wife, or anything that is thy neighbor. So if he's got the snowmobiles and the boats and the four-wheelers, you know,
I should go join him?
yeah. Just be
Okay.
friends with them, then maybe you can ride them and you don't have to buy them.
My luck, they'd break down and I'd be stuck with a bill.
The law says if he was there, you're not responsible for it, but if he's not there, you're responsible for it.
That's right. Sometimes I don't like the Bible.
Yeah.
I read it and go, that, of course, Lord, you're not talking about me, right?
Yeah.
He said, no, I wrote that verse specifically for you. Well, chapter 1, look at verse 22. How long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? And the scorners delight in scorning. Fools hate knowledge. What do we find out about a scorner?
Politician.
I'm sorry?
Sounds like a politician.
Yeah?
Like a contempt or disdain for something.
Like some people scorn the Bible. Or scorn the truth. That can come from a person who thinks that, like this, well, you just think you know it all. A man told me one time, I was talking to him, trying to give him some advice. He's going into ministry, and he looked at me and he said, you just think you're the only church. I said, when did I say that? I said, I'm trying to help you. He soon. Go ahead.
Proverbs 19:29 says, judgments are prepared for scorners and stripes for the back of fools.
Mm.
Says, smite a scorner and the simple will beware.
Brother Casey, how about you come up here for a minute? I gotta.
His notes are not written right here for me. Improvise? He's the improviser. He's excellent at that. I am not an improviser. Scorner. Scorners. All right. More thoughts on scorners.
Says a scorner loveth not one that reproveth him.
What verse is that?
That's Proverbs 15:12. Neither will he go unto the wise.
Contempt or disdain of what did you say, Brother Tom? Contempt or disdain of what?
For something.
For anything, yeah. And have you all not noticed that any topic, anything, any word that anyone has to say is in contempt of it? The hours I'm working, the people I'm working with, the roads, they just don't get the roads right. They just don't know how to line the stores out right. Scorn, 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 scorn.
In the verse that he had there, Proverbs 1:22, it says, how long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity, and ye scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. So they delight in scorning.
Yeah.
Proverbs 24:9, thought of foolishness is sin, and the scorner is an abomination to men.
To men. Yeah. Did you have a definition for scorner? You write all these definitions down?
I have,
Same thing as Brother Tom, okay.
Then I got down the opposite of being humble and obedient.
Opposite of humility. I don't have a watch. I don't got my phone.
Only appears 11 times, and 10 of them are in Proverbs.
Sure.
Proverb 13:1, scorner heareth not rebuke.
yeah,
Anyone's ever been on Facebook, you know that's true.
Yeah, that's it. Facebook. That's the platform for it right there. That's what spreads it.
Scorn? Yeah, good.
Rename it. Got about 10 minutes, Casey.
Okay, thank you. Would you? I don't have a watch or a clock, so if you would, please give me a sign, unless Pastor Eaton returns. Okay, scorners. Here, and it's 2 times. Those 2 of those verses were connected with the knowledge. So you've probably found yourself a couple times in a spot where someone has scorned, and you're just kind of, you turn an eye at it and you say, that's just not true. Right? That's based on your emotional reaction to whatever. You know, sometimes you see that. Sometimes it's you who does the scorning and other people do it to you.
If you'd seen any of the commercials,
Any of the,
either side, it's like, oh.
right, all of the ads. That's all they're doing. Scorn, yeah. Yeah. Scorner was 11 times, you said in the Bible, Brother Dan?
Yeah, and 10 of them were in Proverbs.
10 are in Proverbs, yeah. And where's the one that's not?
It's Isaiah 29:20. For the terrible one is brought to naught, and the scorner is consumed, and all that watch for iniquity are cut off.
There's also some plural ones. Where'd it go? Hosea 7:5. In the day of our king, the princes have made him sick with bottles of wine. He stretched out his hand with scorners.
Because misery loves company. All right, yeah, all right. Let's move on to Talebearer, chapter 11, verse 13. A talebearer revealeth secrets. Oh my. This is just one of those that we all criticize, but we're all guilty of. Yes, sister.
okay, see, this, description was one who spreads malicious stories or gossip or rumors, a tattletale.
Spreads malicious stories,
Yeah. So it isn't just,
gossip
it isn't just telling something about someone, it's being malicious in it.
with a bad, evil intent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The person who circulates, again, rumors that distorts the truth. Or outline lies.
It's hard not to connect these to politics right now, isn't it? So the verse, a talebearer revealeth secrets. So it's as if it's true, but some things are not supposed to be, or should not be, publicly known. But a talebearer, because they got the goods and they got the dirt, they have to spread it. You know what I know? Do you hear what I hear? But he that is of a faithful spirit concealeth the matter. You could probably run faithful spirit with love and charity, because love covereth a multitude of sins and a multitude of transgressions.
Proverbs 26:20 goes with that, really. It says, where no wood is, there the fire goeth out, so where there is no talebearer, the strife ceases.
There we go. There we go. Any talebearer, Proverbs 11:13. We're all guilty of it. We all hate it. We all know it's wrong, but we're all guilty of it. It's so fun to talk about things. And what else are you going to talk about? You know?
Proverbs 18:8 says, the words of the talebearer are as wounds they put down into the innermost parts of the belly. So those words affect
Yeah.
physically a person.
Yeah.
You know, you can really
I have that happen to me a lot, where it's just something I hear or even sometimes I say, and it ruminates in my head for the next 24, 48 hours. And there's multiple people that have, their body shuts down under stress because of words. That's it, just simple words. And if they're connected to a tough situation, that makes it even more so hard.
Here's another side of it, Proverbs 20:19, he that goeth about as a talebearer revealeth secrets. Therefore, meddle not with him that flattereth with his lips.
Mm-hmm.
Flattery.
Flattery will get you nowhere.
Keep yourself.
Wouldn't it be better maybe just to go to the source instead of talking to someone else about it, go to the source and ask them if they need help instead of talking against them?
That doesn't help my rumor.
It doesn't, that's always the best thing to do, is absolutely.
Proverbs 26:22 says the words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly, goes along with verse 8 in chapter 18.
To bear a tale. A lot of the King James words, you have to break up the whole word, and break it up into individual words. And that's how a lot of the words are formed back in the old King James Bible. So it's a tale bearer, you're bearing it, as opposed to just ignoring it, letting it go. Multiple times. Pastor Heaton, I'm sure, could give you 1,000 examples of this over his 40 years of ministry. But you hear something, only 2 examples?
2,000.
Oh. Yeah. You hear something, and the best reaction is to ignore it.
Amen.
Forget it. And if it's something about a personal friend, ignore it. Let your love for that person stand over top of whatever's being told and said. Any other thoughts? We got one more maybe, and we'll finish up here.
Webster says, a tale is a telling, information, disclosure of anything secret.
Keyword secret. A tale, he connects tale with something secret. Not tale bearer, but actual tale.
Just a tale.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. All right, we're running out of time. Let's get this last one here done. Righteous, chapter 10, verse 3. The Lord will not suffer the soul of the righteous to famish, but he casteth away the substance of the wicked. Everyone in Ukraine knows Psalm 91, where the Lord will not suffer the righteous to go be hungry or have want. Any thoughts on that? Because it's a bit of a contradiction, isn't it? Because it's not, you think what you think about, well, people in the floods, they lost their house. People in the war, they lost their house. Or you just hit a deer and you lost your car. Or you had a fire and your barn burnt down. It says, how is the Lord not, how is that being promised and fulfilled out?
Particular super preachers like said that once in a while you need to remind the Lord that he's supposed to take care of you. I said, what did that do for John and Betty Stan?
Yeah, yeah.
What did it do for the Waldens and driven out of Hitler?
Yeah.
I mean, it's true, what he says is true, but he was talking to Israel and during the tribulation.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that this verse said, the Lord will not suffer the soul of the righteous to famish.
Yeah. There's probably key to that, isn't there? Yeah.
David said in Psalm 37:25, I've been young and now I'm old, yet have not seen the righteous forsaken nor his seed begging bread.
Yeah.
To go on what you said, Marie, in Proverbs 10:21, it says, the lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for want of wisdom.
So just remember that there's a doctrinal context to the Old Testament Psalms and Proverbs. The Jews were promised in Leviticus chapter 28 and, Leviticus chapter 26 and Deuteronomy chapter 28, two very interesting chapters where the Jews were physically promised these very things.
During the 40 years that they roamed, they had bread every day.
40 years they roamed, they had bread every single day, Pastor Eden says. Yeah, taken care of. Yeah.